Vignette 12. Craer 1 by Commander Asadullah. In late March 1986, the Soviet and DRA forces launched a major offensive against Mujahideen bases at Craer on the Pakistani border, map 11-15, Craer 1. Craer is located east of the Sarkani district center in Kunar province. The Mujahideen maintain two bases in the mountain valley named Shahid Abdul Latif and Fatah. The Mujahideen could reach the Bajar area in Pakistan from the two bases. The bases served as border supply depots and staging areas for Mujahideen attacks against the Soviet DRA forces in Kunar province. My Osama bin Zayed regiment manned both of the Craer bases. The regiment's manpower fluctuated depending on the requirements and situation. The proximity of the bases to Mujahideen camps across the border in Pakistan made it easier to reinforce the Craer regiment at short notice. In March 1986, prior to the enemy offensive, my regiment was under strength. Later in the battle, when reinforcements arrived from Bajar in Pakistan, the number of Mujahideen reached nearly 400. We had many indications that the Soviets and DRA were planning an attack, but we did not know when it would be launched. During the last week of March, when the weather was still cold and the mountaintops were still covered with snow, we detected enemy movement from the Sarkani direction across the Nawabad Bridge. The enemy made no attempt to conceal or camouflage his action and apparently wanted to draw our attention to his movement. We later found out that the enemy's show of force was part of a deception plan to cover another attack that the enemy launched from Pashad, about 20 kilometers southwest of Sarkani. We did not expect an attack on Craer from Pashad. We prepared for an enemy attacking from Sarkani and deployed the bulk of the force to the valley entrance facing the Sarkani district center. This was the main avenue of approach to Craer, and I expected the enemy to use it. A mixed Soviet DRA column, led by local guides, crossed the Kunar River at Nawabad Bridge, northeast of Sarkani, and attacked my forward positions in the late afternoon, map 11-14, Craer 1. This was where I expected them, and heavy fighting ensued as enemy infantry and armored vehicles fought with my resistance fighters at the valley entrance. Both sides had heavy losses. While the enemy tied my forces down, he launched another attack from Pashad along the mountain pass to outflank my force. This attacking column consisted of Soviet infantry, possibly a Spetsnaz detachment, and it moved undetected to the rear of my force and seized the undefended high ground on the Spina Tsoka mountains. From there, the Soviet detachment attacked us from the rear and overran both Mujahideen Valley bases, including our main supply depot. By next morning, we had lost all our installations and were surrounded by the enemy forces. The enemy was pounding our positions from the high ground to our rear. I had crossed the border and mobilized a Mujahideen force in the Bajar camps, and as the enemy fought for Craer, the reinforcing Mujahideen force moved toward Craer to help the embattled defenders. My reinforcements moved early in the morning to the border and infiltrated through concealed approaches to Craer, since the enemy dominated the main road from the high ground. Around noon, I was moving with a 6-man group when we stumbled on a group of Soviets. Apparently, they were a command group. We attacked the group, and after a brief but fierce clash, in which both sides threw hand grenades at each other, we killed a senior Soviet officer. This apparently led to the withdrawal of the Soviets. With the arrival of the Mujahideen reinforcements, the Soviet position was threatened from the rear. Fragmented fighting broke out in separate areas throughout the valley. The enemy began to pull out in the afternoon, and by the evening we Mujahideen recaptured the valley and our bases. The bases were mostly destroyed by the enemy. We caught a group of Soviet soldiers in one of our supply caves at the depot. We attempted to flush them out and lost several Mujahideen killed and wounded to AK-74 fire. Finally, we fired an RPG into the cave and then threw hand grenades into it, silencing the enemy. The next morning we found several dead Soviets in the cave. We buried our dead and evacuated our wounded. I had roughly 25% casualties, 33 KIA and 40 WIA. I think that enemy losses were higher because we captured some 60 enemy small arms. Commentary. By drawing the bulk of the Mujahideen forces away from their base and attacking the base from the rear, the Soviets achieved a major surprise through deception and good planning. This enabled them to overrun and destroy the Mujahideen bases without facing any resistance. But Soviet failure to block the Mujahideen reinforcement routes resulted in apparent heavy Soviet losses and forced them to withdraw from the areas they had so easily captured. Mujahideen rapid reinforcement changed the course of the battle. Seizing and retaining the initiative is crucial to any tactical scheme. The Mujahideen lost the initiative to the enemy at the beginning of the battle, but the Soviets failed to retain the initiative and lost it to the Mujahideen maneuver of reserves from the rear. This decided the final outcome of the battle. Guerrilla warfare is no different from conventional warfare in that a reserve can drastically change the situation through quick and effective commitment before the opponent consolidates his tactical success. Vignette 13, Crayer 2 by Commander Asadullah. At the end of 1987, when the Soviet forces were preparing to begin their negotiated withdrawal from Afghanistan, they launched a number of high-visibility offensives which served their propaganda campaign, which claimed that the Soviet army was able to defeat any Mujahideen force anywhere. To this end, the Soviets conducted Operation Magistral in Paktia province to open the unopenable Gardez-Kaust highway. At the same time, the Soviets attacked major Mujahideen border bases. In Kunar province, the Soviet DRA forces targeted the Mujahideen bases at Crayer for destruction. Apparently, they intended to establish a border security outpost at the Spina Soka mountain on the border with Pakistan to control several infiltration routes connecting to Nalwa Pass, Ganjgal, and other valleys in Pakistan, with the road to Sarkani and the valleys of Shankray, Shalay, and Olay in Afghanistan. In late December 1987, I received intelligence reports that a Soviet-led DRA column would attack the Crayer bases. The intelligence agents did not know when the attack would come. There were only 170 men in my regiment at the time. I established security posts and conducted reconnaissance along the routes over which I expected the attack. Based on past enemy behavior, I expected him to avoid night combat and night maneuver. I expected him to attack at dawn or later and to use the valley approach. The enemy surprised me. He chose to move and fight at night, and instead of using the valley approach, he moved to the north flank of the mountain and attacked over it. He did this to get behind my forward defenses and unhinge my defense. Map 11-16, Crayer 2.